I'm good on my end, Mr. Chair. I'm just waiting for Carrie. I don't know if we're live streaming or not.
Okay, I'll just wait and get the.
We are live streaming. I'm ready to go when you are, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, KJ. Thanks, Shane. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, early afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a virtual hearing of the Boston City Council's Committee on Environment, Resiliency, and Parks. My name is Matt O'Malley. I'm the Council President pro tempore, as well as the Chair of the Committee on the Environment. We are here today to discuss Docket 0297, which is a city-level conservation core for the City of Boston. This was sponsored by my colleague and friend, City Councilor Kenzie Bach. We are going to have a really interesting panel and a great conversation. Wanted to acknowledge and thank some of our panelists who have joined us. Others will be joining, but wanted to first thank the Reverend Mary Emma White-Hammond, Chief of Energy, Environment, and Open Space, who's with us. Chief Selena Barrios Milner, Chief of Equity and Inclusion. Trin Nguyen, the Director of OWD. Talia Rivera Wright, the Director of SOAR. Dr. Rufus Falk, Director of Public Safety, and Rashad Cope, who is the Director of YE. And it's just, we're going to hear from more members of the administration, as well as some tremendous advocates who've been such a part of this. I will not be on for the duration of this hearing. I'm just kicking it off and I'm turning the gavel over to the capable hands of Councillor Bach. But before I do that, wanted to again acknowledge that this is Docket 0297. This is a public hearing which is being recorded and live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv. It will be rebroadcast at a later date on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Verizon Fios Channel 964. We will take public testimony at the end of this hearing, and if you wish to testify via video conference, please email shane.pack@boston.gov. That's SHANE.PAC@boston.gov to sign up. When you are called, please state your name and affiliation, as well as your residence, and limit your comments to no more than about 2 minutes to ensure that all comments can be heard. Additionally, any member of the public is invited to submit written testimony by emailing ccc.ep@boston.gov. That's ccc.ep@boston.gov. Again, wanted to echo my incredible support for this really groundbreaking initiative. It's wonderful. It's great to see. Mayor Janey and Councillor Bach had really begun the process of not only making sure that this is a reality, but this is done exceptionally well. It's the purpose, I believe, of this hearing today. So count me as among the many voices that are wholly enthusiastic about this. Congratulate my colleague on a job well done and look forward to continued work in the months and years ahead. So Councillor Bach, I'm going to hand the gavel over to you. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President O'Malley. Yeah, thank you to everybody for being here. I'm very excited about this. When the administration under Mayor Janey introduced its budget back in April of this year, there was $1 million in it for a Green Jobs Initiative. And then through conversation with the council in June and the supplemental appropriation that we passed, that increased by another $3 million. And I'm excited that that's kind of put us in the position of starting to think really about what this looks like, because there is money on the table. And I know that that Green Jobs Conservation Corps, kind of a Green New Deal for the city, is a big goal of the incoming mayor. So excited that so much work that we're going to hear about today is already underway from the departments laying the groundwork there. I will just say I had the pleasure in late September of going down to Philadelphia with Reverend Mary Emma White-Hammond, our Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Space, who we're about to hear from, to really look at and kick the tires of the Philadelphia Power Corps, which is, I think, the best kind of model program in the country on this front. And we're looking in this, when we talk about green jobs, for sort of a model program in two ways, right? I mean, one is just the enormous amount of additional work that we need to do in order to meet the challenge of climate change here in the city. So whether we're talking about caring for a very expanded urban forest, putting in green stormwater infrastructure, the challenges of how we actually get the building stock retrofitted, which we've taken a big step towards mandating here in Boston. All that work needs to be done for Boston to meet its targets and protect the city. But also, there's no way that we are making progress on our equity targets on a really inclusive Boston economy, on closing the enormous racial economic inequality gap without this being a huge part of the solution. And so as we think about creating green jobs, they have to be jobs that are accessible to our young people here in Boston, our Black and brown communities. It's a once in a lifetime chance for us as we open up these new spaces to make sure that they're accessible to everybody. And what I was so excited about in Philadelphia was to see that really happening, to see young people who had grown up in Philadelphia who felt ownership over this work, who were learning the skills, who were not just going through a program that gave them a couple of months of training, but were actually then landing in sustainable careers. On the public job side, there's a whole new green stormwater infrastructure department there, a number of the roles of which are filled with Power Corps grads. And then on the, and then also in the private universe around solar, around trees, et cetera. So it gave me a lot of hope and encouragement. And of course, I'm a Boston booster, so I think we can do it one better here. But one thing that really came across from all of that was that the first steps of putting together a program like that, many of them are internal, and they have to do with our city departments collaborating with each other and making sure that, a program that really works is going to have a whole kind of wraparound aspect to it, which means a lot of hands, and that's great, but like those hands need to be coordinated and needs to be an intentional effort. And so I'm excited today that our departments have taken a bunch of concrete steps in that direction and are really hitting the ground running. I'm looking at how we can do something really serious in this space here. And so pleased today to convene this hearing, really to hear from them and to update the public and the many groups and community members who've been agitating for something like this on kind of where we're going from here. President O'Malley already introduced the many directors and chiefs who are with us, but I will go to them in order for some opening remarks and presentations, and I'll defer to you, Chief White-Hammond, sort of in the order of operations. But let me first hand the speaking platform over to Reverend Mariama White-Hammond, again, our Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Space.
Thank you so much, Councilor Bach. It's been exciting to work on this. And I think I know there was a city council hearing in March, and I think what's exciting is to see how much the team of folks that are coming together has expanded over these last 6 months as folks have engaged in this conversation. As you mentioned, we had a great visit to Philadelphia, so I'll go ahead and give sort of an opening presentation that gives some context, and then there are a number of folks that I think we've had the opportunity to name that this initiative really spans across 4 different cabinets. So that's been really exciting. I've had opportunities to talk with Chief Morikawa and Chief Barrios Milner is on the call right now. So it's just been really exciting to see folks ready. And Chief Martinez. Really glad to have folks together in this space. So I'm going to go ahead and give. Go ahead.
Can I break in? I'm so sorry. I neglected to see that my colleague Ed Flynn had joined us, and I would love to just give him a chance to say opening remarks before we jump into the presentation. Forgive me. Councilor Flynn?
Thank you, Councilor Bach, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. I don't have any opening statement. Thank you for calling on me. I just wanted to thank you, Councilor Bach, for your leadership on this, as well as the administration staff that is present. They do an exceptional job working on this issue and so many other issues, and they're very professional and hardworking. So I'm just here to listen and to learn more about it. Thank you, Councilor Bach.
Thanks so much, Councilor Flynn. Sorry, Reverend Mariama, back to you. My apologies for the interruption.
No worries. So we'll go ahead and pull up the slides. Just want to make sure that we have an overview, and then from there, I'll Chief Barrios Milner, would you like to, before I dive in, would you like to just offer some opening remarks?
I can do that. Sorry, when my screen went full screen, I couldn't find my unmute button. Yes, I'm happy to do that, and I'll be brief because I really want to jump into this and getting to the work of implementing this program. But I'm Selena Barrios-Milner, Chief of Equity and Inclusion. Really want to thank you for your leadership on this, Councilor Bach, and Chair O'Malley for hosting this hearing today. And thank you, Councilor Flynn, for being here today and for your constant dedication to the City of Boston's workers and economic opportunity here in the City of Boston. Also want to thank Reverend Mariama White-Hammond's leadership on this and for bringing all of us together. I think this is exactly how you build inclusive and equitable systems, is that you look at it from every angle, right? It's not just one department and not just one program. And so thank you for your vision and your leadership. I just want to share that in my work, promoting equity and inclusion, first through an economic development lens and now as Chief of Equity. We constantly come across, so part of my portfolio, which I won't get into the full portfolio of the cabinet, but it is looking at economic equity and inclusion and specifically supplier diversity. So how our city is contracting with diverse business owners. And we also have a local hire policy through the Boston Resident Jobs Policy, which seeks to hire local residents, women, and people of color on City of Boston construction sites. And what we've seen over and over is that when equity isn't built into an industry from the beginning, it never just ends up being equitable, even with all the tools that we now have at our disposal. The lack of access to capital for businesses, or with the BRJP policy, the lack of access to the training that people need to get high-skilled jobs in the construction industry. So that pipeline issue is something we face every day, and we know that happened with a lot of intention, right? That certain groups were kept out and certain groups were promoted. And so we want to take this opportunity with this emerging industry that where we're fighting this climate crisis locally, and we're really looking at what we can do, that our residents have opportunity to get in on the ground floor. We know a lot of this work is not new, but the direction we're going is new. And that they have access to really meaningful employment opportunities that both give them and their families livable wages, but also help contribute to our climate resiliency as a city. So I just think this is one of those, quadruple bottom line programs, and really I'm here to wholeheartedly support. I want to draw the parallel of the cannabis industry, for example, where through Councilor Janey's leadership, we worked really hard to build in equity at the beginning, before licenses were being given out, before dispensaries were being approved. We wanted there to be a one-to-one. So I think this is a similar parallel. We want to build it in from the ground up. And then the last piece before I close is just that I want to make sure, because I've seen this a lot in BRJP, that there's a lot of diversity at sort of the lower paid industries. And I want to make sure that we have I know that we're focusing on young people in this particular case, and that we want to create accessible entry points, but that we're really preparing people for to be owners, to be leaders, to be CEOs, right? And not just workers. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but that we are looking at the full spectrum of opportunity for wealth building for them and their families as well. Because I feel like a lot of times we focus on the entry points and we don't build out the growth pathways. And so thank you all so much for being here today. And I'll close with that remark.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief Barrios-Milner. Reverend White-Hammond?
Great. Thank you so much, Chief Barrios-Milner. And I think your point is well taken. We have to be looking all throughout. There is a lot of talk about what could be possible, but I think, as you've raised, it won't happen unless we make sure that there are the intentional interventions to assure that it does happen. The green economy is growing, and it could include our young people, but it will not include them unless we make sure that it does. So we're really grateful to be working with you. And as we pull up the slides, I want to note that we're talking about a specific intervention, but this is not the only piece of work we have to do around green jobs. This is one piece of the work, but we know that there is a much broader spectrum of work to be done, conversations to be had, folks to be included, and we look forward to continuing to work with your office, the City Council, and the entire of city government, OWD, all of us together to figure out how we make sure equity flows all throughout the system. So I'll go ahead and return to the slides. This is just to give an overview, make sure that we're all on the same page. Some of you might be hearing this for the fourth time. So I will try to be clear, but also concise. So we, as Councilor Bach said, when I first came on, this was a conversation that I had with Mayor Janey in April. This is work that I had been doing before coming. I was part of the green jobs work at the state level and regional and national. So very excited to be looking at how Boston can be engaged. Next slide. Oh, next. Okay, there we go. So just to give folks an overview, that the mayor put in $1 million for green jobs, and that was, supposed to be a catalyst amount to sort of help us figure out what is it that we want to do. And what I committed to the mayor is I will come back to you in 6 months with a more robust plan. But that $1 million was to get us started to figure out how we were going to move forward and to bring some concrete benefits. So we pulled together a community advisory board that met over the summer. We'll talk about their feedback. We also did a green jobs RFI, just to say, if you're out there and you know something about this and you want to share it with us, please send us. And then a number of people responded. We then did an RFP for Catalyst grants for green and mobility jobs. We've been working also with the BTD, which also had some resources. And so we combined our forces to put out $1.5 million in financial support to expand training programs that already exist and connect unemployed and underemployed residents to green job opportunities. So that RFP closed on October 18th. We are in the process of reviewing those proposals right now. But while we were in the conversation, we also received an additional $3 million in ARPA funds for green jobs. And that I know Councilor Bach played a key role in that. And so thankful to the city councilor who have been paying attention to this and think even more is possible. So and the next slide will be showing just who we engaged in that community advisory board. As you can see, the list of folks, it was pretty broad ranging from folks in the BPS system to our community college system, folks that work for companies that hire folks in jobs. We tried to bring together a good cross-section of folks. And this gives us some highlights of the feedback we received. Folks were talking about on-the-job training or earn to learn. How do we make sure that we're not asking people to incur debt or being able to show up for free when folks are coming from low-income communities that do not have the freedom to sort of have that unpaid internship. Again, that conversation about career paths and ones with the most environmental impact and most job openings. There was a piece that came out recently, a report that came out that said the state has set goals for a lot of its environmental impacts in terms of reducing emissions and adaptation, and that we don't currently have sufficient workers to meet those goals. So really looking, where is there already going to be money invested? How do we make sure that our young people are at the forefront, ready to take those jobs, and that we're growing the workforce to do the work we say we want to do? We talked about strengthening connections to youth, communities of color, and employers, building strong wraparound services to make sure, to make sure that there was nothing standing in the way of young people to be able to participate, pairing with industry recognized credentials and working with the companies and the departments that are going to hire to make sure that whatever we're training people are in, they show up day one ready to do the work that is required, and that there's a match between what they've learned and what they need to do well, not just to pass in the job, but to excel in the job. And that we only can do that when we're having those direct conversations with folks who hire. and to prioritize living wage, quarry-friendly jobs. Again, where we said with that wage progression, how do we make sure that we're getting people into jobs, that they're not stuck at the bottom forever, but there's real opportunities for them to keep moving up. And then expose meeting participants to different career options and how to access this. And this was particularly a lot for not just young people, but folks across the board. So I think, as we really have these conversations within the CAB, it became clear that we have some great programs in Boston already, and we have some real challenges around meeting scale. That many of our programs are able to train a couple of young people here and a couple of young people there. But this idea of, they kept raising again, how do we outreach to young people? How do we make sure they're job ready? And we started to say, like, does it make the most sense for each of those programs to be doing that? Or is there a better or stronger possibility that we could create something that has the potential for scale that could then also funnel young people to a lot of the different smaller programs that we have that are more specific, but where they would come in, get some supports, and look at a menu of options rather than each being recruited by this group over here and that group over there, and all of them trying to have the kind of outreach capacity they need. Would it be better to have a more centralized model? And so Councilor Bach has been quite a cheerleader for the Philly Power Core model. From the very first day I was here, she's like, you need to see it. And as many of the people on this call know, I was a youth worker for 14 years, ran a youth organization, worked with young people, hired them, supervised them, sometimes also fired them, and worked with many of the folks on this call, like some of the folks in this group I have known since we were in our 20s, working with young people, really trying to figure out how do we make sure they get what they need. I am sorry to say we have been to too many funerals. I have visited too many different prison systems and been to DYS far too many times. And as I have been called more into this work around ecological justice, I just want to say it's so exciting to, in some ways, reunite with folks that I've worked with for years and work with new, younger folks who are in the work to really figure out, can we take the opportunity that is this green revolution and make sure that our folks are at the front of that, and that in the work they do, they can bring home a good, strong paycheck. They can start their own businesses. They can be at the forefront of addressing the environmental injustices, most of which most deeply impact our environmental justice neighborhoods. So we're really excited to be looking at this model and figuring out how we take the feedback that we got from the Community Advisory Board and figure out how we can do this work at scale. So next slide, we went to look at the Philly Power Core model, and I'll just be honest, I went there with, like a little healthy skepticism, because I've seen a lot of people have really great websites, but then when you go to see the work, it's not always what the website says. But I will say that the very first person we met with was Aaron Kirkland, who is a supervisor at the Philadelphia Water Department. He started in the program himself 7 years ago, got the training. Before he joined Philly Power Core, he didn't really know much about the water department, how it worked, how you got access jobs in it, but he knew that he wanted a career that would allow him to raise a family. He was a returning citizen, and it was clear that he did not want to find himself back incarcerated. And to meet with him, and he's a really humble guy, but he walked me through the maps and how he sends out teams and how he shows them what kinds of things they should be working on, how they prioritize neighborhoods. He walked us through the computer system that they use. And for that to be our first meeting, I was like, this is what we need more of. Young men of color from our environmental justice neighborhoods making the decision. He is the hiring manager now for the Green Stormwater Infrastructure team, which means he's able to lift other folks behind him, bring them in, teach them, and relate to some of the challenges that they're trying to deal with, to make sure that those issues and concerns don't stand in the way of the real opportunities that they're accessing through this program. So the program, as it says, takes place in phases. There's a recruitment process that we've already sort of started talking about. In their early days, and what they've suggested to us is at the beginning, you should have referrals, sit down with a set of trusted partners, people who work with young people, people that work with the constituency of young people that we're looking at, and that constituency is young people 18 to 30, and really figure out how you make sure that these resources are going to the young people that you're sort of most interested in supporting and want to give the biggest impact to. The phase one, after they recruit them, is in something called foundations. Want to know a couple things that are really important about that. Again, this earn to learn model is key. Young people, the moment they come in, are paid, they are working, and in foundations, they are getting job readiness training. They are doing things like learning how to send emails, even setting up an email account. Some of them did not have. Learning how to do an interview, all those kinds of things. But they are on a crew from the very beginning in rotations, trying out and learning about the kinds of jobs that they will then engage in down the line. I think that's really key. We were able to see young people out in the field, working in parks, working in sites for the water department, so that by the time they go into the next phase, they already have some semblance of understanding about what the work is that they might be asked to do. And one of the plus sides to this is even in that foundations training, they are servicing sites identified by the city of Philadelphia. And so basically they go to the water department, they go to the parks department, and they say, what are your deferred maintenance sites? Places that you should, in theory, be taken care of, but the reality is you don't have enough workers to handle it. Give us those sites. We'll start working them. We'll take care of them. So the city receives the benefit of having folks servicing sites that usually wouldn't get done. And those young people are already learning how to do the job that they're going to apply for down the line. So there is a mix of all those job readiness skills, but it's not a bunch of folks in a classroom. They're out in doing the work and learning the skills as part of that work. And so after that 4 months of foundations training, they move on to choose either a fellowship or post-secondary education, where they might decide, I want to do this field, and that field doesn't have what they call an industry academy, which I'll describe next. Or they can go to an organization. For instance, a couple people might go to an urban farm. They don't have the capacity for a 10-person team, but they could take 1 or 2 people. Or phase 2, what they call industry academies. Those industry academies are places where young people are learning and being ready to go into a department that has open jobs. So they scale the amount of young people they take into the industry academy based on their awareness about what jobs are out there. The agreement is to young people, if you come in and you do the 4 months and you're 6 months, or more or less, if you from beginning to end, you do this year, at the other side of this, we will make sure that you have a job. Not just a certificate that says you did it, but we will make sure that you are tracked into an actual job with a real employer. And so that's how folks go. And then it is true, all along the way, folks look at post-secondary education, and I'm really excited that Trin will be talking a little bit more about that and what opportunities we have that in some ways actually exceed some of what Philly is even able to offer. So next slide. So this just, sort of walks you through a little bit more of the compensation. We will be compensating at a much higher level. They were doing $10 an hour. They actually are now at $11 an hour. We're looking at starting from the very beginning at $14 or $15 an hour. We need to make sure we're paying people what it takes to live in Boston. But we are looking at AmeriCorps as a part of that, and then raising additional dollars. But this gives you some sense of that. We'll keep going. Next slide. So this just, sort of walks it through in a different way. You can see here that this is the 3 academies they had previously. It's actually been updated since then, but they have green infrastructure, and that was with the water department, electrical and solar, and then urban forestry. They have since also added masonry and park rangers and a youth work track. So there's a lot of possibilities here that we can expand over time as we move. And some young people become assistant crew leaders after they finish the industry academy for some things that take a little bit more, or if they want to be able to apply into a higher job than an entry level, sometimes doing another rotation gives them the management skills that they need to be able to, again, as people were saying, not just get that entry level job, but have the training and support they need to very quickly be able to move up into a managerial position. So I do want to know, and there's one other thing that's not on here that I think I'll know, and I'm gonna, Dr. Falk will talk about this a little bit more. Philly Power Corps has a specific commitment to working with young people who have been caught up in the court system. And so there's a program that they do that honestly is very similar to what has already been built here in Boston. And so we don't need to replicate what's already here. We're just going to figure out how we create a strong link and pathway. But it is worth noting, again, they are centering those young people that have a lot of skills and potential, but far too often find themselves caught up in our court system and languishing, wasting the time and skills that they have incarcerated. So we'll share a little bit more about how that will work here in Boston, but wanted to note that. Next slide. So when I saw what I saw, and I thought it was pretty amazing, and like I said, I got to meet with young people. I mean, I would ask questions, and it wasn't just one superstar young person that would answer. They would all go through and answer each on their own. And I do hope that at some point we'll be able to bring some of those young people up here, because they were definitely like, I'll come to Boston to talk about it. And I want to make sure that we follow through. It was pretty amazing seeing them. And so I called up folks in each department, everyone you see on here. I called and said, hey, I want to talk to you about something. And I want to, what do you think? And once it was clear that we had a strong appetite across all of our different departments, that we saw an opportunity, OWD has already been doing some work on this. There was stuff we could already pull in. It just seemed like it was possible. So we sat down with the mayor and she said, hey, I'll give you the green light. You said you'd come back in 6 months. It's been 6 months. This sounds like everything that you have said. And so we went ahead and did a press conference. This is at Youth Opportunities Unlimited. It is the intention at this point for that to be the fiscal sponsor home for this program. YOU is already doing this work, already working with this constituency of young people. So it seems like the natural fit. And they already are building pathways. So there's just so much powerful alignment. And I won't say too much more because I know Trin Nguyen is here to talk about that. So I'll leave that for her. But we highlighted again that we're supporting Boston communities that have been particularly hard hit by the pandemic, but we all know that the communities hit by the pandemic were the ones that were already struggling before the pandemic. But the ARPA funds do give us an opportunity to help people recover stronger. And we focused on the earn to learn, connecting graduates to full-time positions that have real growth opportunities. And Trin will talk about this more, this connection, including tuition-free community college, which is a huge opportunity to build with something that already exists and just link it in and give young people, again, multiple pathways to move forward. So I just want to move on. Next slide. It just shows you that this is the crew of folks that have been meeting, and Chief Barrios Milner should be on there. So that is my excuse me for that omission. We'll make sure that is fixed on the slide. We have been moving forward, having conversations, figuring out how we start to make this real. And next slide, I'll just talk through what our ongoing tasks are as we've been setting. So October through December, really developing this model, develop the core team of representatives from City of Boston partner departments and set regular meeting schedule. Done. Lindsay has been corralling us to make sure that we know when our next meeting is. Lindsay Santana, who oversees engagement here in the Environment Department, has been working with all these busy schedules to get us moving. Establish a budget and contract with YOU to fiscally sponsor and host the Boston replication of Power Corps. Really quickly, I was going to present budget, but we'll get that to folks later. We are now functioning from the notion that all in all, over the next 3 years, this will take about $10 million to do. We're looking at about 1.5 the first year, then scaling up to about 3, and then a 5 million in year 3. By year 3, the goal is to be as large as the Philly Power Corps, which works with about 100 young people a year. We may be able to do a little bit more because they have to build a lot of programs themselves, but there's some numbers of things that are already here that we might be able to refer young people to. So we're looking at whether or not 100 is the right number, or if we could do more. But that's what we're looking at right now. We have started to negotiate and execute a consulting contract with Philly Power Corps and working out the scope. And the goal is for them to come in January to actually do some sort of retreat planning with us, where they sort of really help us walk through it. And we're going to look at like doing that in person. So we're trying to figure that out. We need to recruit an executive director to run the program. We have a job description for that. So if you know someone that you would think would be amazing, we think this role is really, really, really important. We need somebody, as much as there's a lot of excitement on this call, we need someone who lives and breathes this all day and is not trying to do a bunch of other things. Establish criteria for industry academies and narrow the potential academies. And begin to explore which part of the model can be run by subcontracting agencies within the city or the wider community. Right now, Philly does a lot. It's on its own in one model, but we think that there's some of the pieces of the model that already exist, so we don't need to rebuild them. Last slide. I'm sorry, no, this is really long. So we'll do January through March, we'll staff up, recruit young people. You can look at the pieces there. And then April through June, we'll launch the program, get started. Our goal is to start with 30 young people. And so I'll pause there because I know I was talking really long, but I hope that this gives people more details and folks can review this on their own later. With that, I will, the plan is to hand it over to Trinh Nguyen from OWD, who has a lot more to fill in.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend. I just want to quickly thank all the counselors, particularly Councilor Bach, for her leadership. Thank you, Reverend Hammond, and also White Hammond, and then also Chief Barrows at the same time. I do want to say that we do have a lot of current systems in place in the ecosystem, so we can take some pieces from community colleges, other training programs that already exist, and align these systems. So we don't really need to always reinvent the wheel. And so given that, I'm going to focus my presentation on areas in which we can provide support and not reinvent the wheel. So with that, I'd like to ask someone to pull up my slides quickly. They're not as pretty as Reverend White Hammond, but I hope that they are substance enough to show the kind of work that could be done. Do we have the slides? I sent them over to Chantal yesterday.
Yeah, we should be able to get, one second. Carrie or Shane, do one of you have the OWD slides that you could throw up?
Yeah, there's only a few slides that takes about 5 minutes to go through.
I can pull it up right now, Madam Chair.
Great, thanks, Shane.
Thank you, Shane.
My pleasure.
And while we're waiting for the slides, I just want to reiterate that our office and my role is really to be the operational person in the background. So we hope that we can provide the execution piece along with our partners at SOAR and a variety of entities. So that's one. The second piece is that the host and fiscal agent, it would be a pleasure to provide support to support the Youth Power Corps in that role. So we would be providing fiscal management, administration, and also space at 7 Palmer, which is right in Nubian Square. So it's right across the street from the Boston Public School headquarters. So the slides that Shane has provided, I wanted to just go over a little bit about Youth Options Unlimited and where we can provide support without reinventing the wheel. And so Reverend White-Hammond spoke about the Philly model. In her slide, this is particularly we can provide support around the pre-process and the recruitment, as well as the foundation training in phase 2 of post-secondary education. We also could provide in the area of exit, which is to provide employer engagement into career pathways and jobs. And so those are the areas that we can provide support. And specifically with Youth Options Unlimited, just going over where there is an overlap and how we can appropriately tailor some of this framework into the Power Core. And so with Youth Options Unlimited, also known as YOU, a lot of the information is on the website, so I'm not going to go through all of them to respect your time, but I do want to go over quickly the areas in which we can provide support without reinventing the wheel. Again, these components can be immersed in the various phases and components of the Power Core in Boston that Reverend White-Hammond had in her slide. So there's 4 major areas in which YOU can share its best practices and work. One is around the subsidized employment. Job readiness, workshops, year-round curriculum facilitated. These are evidence-based curriculum from the state and also from our own work with the randomized control studies that we've done with Northeastern. We know they work. The second area of support is the intensive case management. Again, YOU is very focused on serving quote unquote at-risk youth. So coming out of the criminal justice system, so we're not working with hundreds of partners or doing hundreds of things, but just focusing on strategies that produce the outcome that is needed. So very laser focused in those areas. So intensive case management is really key to providing success and support for young people, especially when they're coming out of COVID. The third is private sector job placement. We have strong employer relationships and career developments with our case managers. And the last is educational support and placements for young people in the Green Jobs Corps. The key partnerships that we currently work with employers are National Grid, Starbucks, Boston Building Trades, and local small business owners within the Roxbury and Mattapan areas. And so we have that experience in employer engagement to work on the exit phase of the Power Core. YOU does direct referrals with the Suffolk County DA, SOAR Boston, Juvenile Adult Probation, and Public Defender's Office. So again, very targeted in our work. For YOU, in the next 2 slides, next slide, please. You'll see just kind of like our annual goals, what we hold ourselves accountable, and the 4 goals reflect the work that has been described in the previous slide. So every quarter we come up with, every year we come up with annual goals, and every quarter case managers and YOU staff have to report how they're doing on those goals. So the next two slides just gives you an idea of how we track and measure our progress, and then go back to our staff and work closely with them to ensure that we're providing quality services and programs to our young people. So the key word here is quality, not necessarily quantity, mainly because the kind of youth and work that's needed for our young people is extremely key. And so what you see here are quarterly example numbers and also annual numbers that we serve. And again, it's not in the massive in the hundreds, but in terms of direct goals, the numbers are smaller and more focused. And then for our TFCC slide, next slide, please. Chief White-Hammond talked about another area in which we are supporting. And so that's on the post-secondary education or stackable credits, or what we call matriculation agreements. And so we found that we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel on this piece. And that, for instance, a lot of our work in terms of industry academy, it could fit in to the Power Corps model. And so we know that Bunker Hill Community College, for example, is launching their clean water certification. Also, RCC has short-term certificate training programs from their Green Maintenance Center and Academy with Youth Build. And so they're already doing those industry certifications that can fit into the academy. Now, we would have to see what the intricacies of those competencies are to tailor some of the industry training, but that's an area that we can definitely help on. What's key about pulling in the community colleges is that they already have stackable credits. So let's say if the young person is doing in the Power Corps is doing industry academy training, they're already receiving credits towards an existing associate degree, and we would pay for it. And so the next two slides just gives you an example of our tuition-free community colleges. Right now, we have 6 partners in our TFCC program. They're Bunker Hill Community College, Roxbury Community College, Benjamin Franklin Institute, Massasoit Community College, Mass Bay Community College, and also Urban College is another college that it's a non-traditional pathway to post-secondary education for an associate degree that we include in our TFCC program. Now, all students who participate in our TFCC program, we pay for mandatory and tuition for up to 3 years of full time, and then also pay for labs and also provide them with stipends so that they can pay for T-passes and a variety of support services they need to help complete. We also team them up with a coach from Success Boston to ensure that they enroll and complete at the same time. And then also recently, due to COVID, we provide Chromebooks and other Wi-Fi access so that they can complete their semester and degrees online. And so we have research on some ways in which we can tailor the program that makes it successful for young people, especially in the Power Corps. So, and we love to continue the partnership and then align our systems and work within the Power Corps structure. And so in closing, I just want to say that we're very excited for this work. Can't wait to start. It's been long in the making, so ready to roll up our sleeves and get some action started. Happy to answer questions offline and now if my time allows. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Trin. And I think, Mariama, are we gonna go next to Rufus? Is that the plan? I think probably what makes sense is to have everyone do the presentations and then we'll jump into any questions. I do want to acknowledge that Councilor Braden has been here since the start of the presentation. So, but we'll wait to questions. So. Great.
So yes, we're handing it over to you, Dr.
Okay. Good afternoon, councilors. It's good to see you guys. Also good to see my colleagues also on the Zoom. I'm just going to provide a little bit of context and a little content to sort of support some of the narrative that's been out there that we already have some of these pieces already in place. An example of that is with program Operation Exit. Operation Exit is a program that was established in 2014 with former Mayor Walsh and the Office of Public Safety, recognizing that there was a significant gap, and there was a lack of a pathway for individuals who were looking to transition out of a life of gang involvement to positive and productive adulthood. And there was a lack of sort of career pathways to assist young people and young adults to sort of stay on that path and be able to aim some gainful employment and learn some skills that would allow them to provide for themselves and for their families. And with that, Operation Exit was created. And it was created with this idea of the building trades being the pathway for individuals from the city of Boston to sort of change their lives. And today we've had 6 cohorts that have gone through the process. The Operation Exit program is a 3-week training model where it is a pre-apprenticeship program for individuals where they get to learn some of the different disciplines within the building trade. So it's everything from pipe fitting to carpentry to masonry to pipe fitting, sheet metal, sprinkler fitting. Those are some of the sort of skills that these young adults go through. And upon the completion of this 3-week training, then the individuals who graduate have the opportunity to go into those actual union halls to begin this apprenticeship program. And this initiative is not only with Mayor's Office of Public Safety, and we get referrals from SOAR Boston. We work closely with YOU and building pathways to be able to provide the training, and then also most importantly with the union halls to be able to provide the placements after the trainings conclude. To date, we've had 105 graduates who have gone through the program. We think about some of the demographics. Average age is about 25. About 90% of our graduates would be considered Black and brown. Individuals who are from Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, individuals who come from these same neighborhoods that have been also dealing with the pandemic at a disproportionate rate, but also dealing with issues around environmental justice as well. So we're talking about higher asthma rates and things like that. So the population that we're already serving are the population or the participants who are from the communities in which we're trying to serve with this new initiative. I think one of our main issues has always been that if we had more options in terms of placements, we can have more kids. We've been trying to do our 7th cohort for about 2 years now. An issue has been placement, due in large part to COVID, but also in large part that our young people aren't a top priority for placement. And oftentimes that's the case because the city of Boston, we're not controlling the placement. If we can control the placement, I think that gives us more, it will give us more leverage and more latitude to say we are building a protocol where this amount of young people have to be put into this apprenticeship program. We can control the training. We have more ability to hire more young people. Right now we have 58 young people looking to begin our 7th cohort for Operation Exit within the building trade, which is why we tried to expand to culinary, cannabis, and some other industries, but recognizing that if we can help young people get some of these skills around this green economy and also some other positions within departments in the city of Boston, they'll be able to have real careers where they will be able to not only change their fortunes, but to be able to change their family's fortunes. One of the demographics that I did mention was that 40% of our participants had children. 40% of the young people, young adults that we've had in our program have had children. So these are individuals now who are able to buy homes, individuals who have cars, individuals who are now foremen, that are literally not only changing their trajectory, but have also impacted the groups that they were a part of as well. Young men who were a part of neighborhood groups who are now role models, who are now, not only they were always leaders, but now they're leading in a more positive and productive way, which is sort of changing some of the narrative. Aside from Operation Exit within the building trades, we have a program called Operation Renew. I know Councilor Flynn was there, but we just had a graduation. Operation Renew is a similar program, but we focus on individuals who are returning from federal prison. And this program is, we've only had 5 cohorts, and we have a total of about 22 graduates. But these individuals are individuals who sometimes have done 15 years in federal prison, but are coming home with a level of tenacity and a level of ingenuity that if just given some additional opportunity to beef up their skill set, they can be able to do any and everything that they choose to. So with Operation Renew, we've been intentional about trying to provide and help to build up their skill set around some of the building trades and sort of more industrial skill set. But that's a population that would also benefit greatly from this green jobs opportunity. So with that, we already have the experience in terms of having the relationships with the referral partners, both internal and external, with the participants that we're looking for. And we already have some experience in running a program in terms of the city. As a city, we already have experience with doing a training program that has a placement component at the end. And I think the last piece that I will mention is that just in terms of our participants, recognizing that an individual who might not be identified as at risk or approval risk doesn't mean that they're not at risk or approval risk. So to broaden our referrals, to not just look at who we think is going to be the ones who's going to be the next leaders of a gang, but looking at the brothers, looking at the siblings, looking at the children of individuals who have passed away to homicide. That can also be a way in which we sort of close this achievement gap or this lack of opportunity that we've been experiencing for the last 40 plus years in the city. So I will shut my mouth and I will pass the mic to whoever's next. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Rufus. And I think it's Talia Rivera with SOAR who's up next, and then we'll go to Rashad. So Talia, do you want to?
Yes, it's Talia. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, Talia.
All right, it's fine. Again, my name's Talia. I'm the director over at SOAR Boston. SOAR is an acronym for Street Outreach, Advocacy, and Response, and we are a program of the Boston Centers for Youth and Families. SOAR is a program that's designed to help young people who are considered gang involved to change their life trajectory. And we do that by facilitating access to workplace readiness, life skills that we hope improves their cognitive, social, and economic growth. Our target population are mostly men of color, although we do have a few females that are between the ages of 14 to 24. And our criteria are those young people who are repeatedly engaging in member or motive-based gang violence, or is actively associating with or aiding others in engaging in member and motive-based violence. And what we mean by that, motive-based violence is a term that was coined by a professor of sociology at Northwestern University. But member-based violence is defined as any act in which a participant, a victim, or a suspect is affiliated with the gang, but it's on a personal level, right? So maybe I have a feud with Rufus over, this is silly, but over a baby's mother, right? So it's not necessarily the gang as a whole, it's me as an individual at odds with Dr. Folk for a particular reason. And motive-based acts of violence is a direct function of gang activity. You hurt someone I care about, we hurt someone you care about. But our program is based, we have three program components, one of which is the street outreach. When we're fully staffed, what we do is we deploy 24 outreach and engagement coordinators, formerly known as street workers, to specific gangs to build really deep, authentic relationships and really embed themselves in the gang to help change behavior. And we're working currently with 46 of the most active and violent gangs in the city. We've developed a roster of roughly 360 youth and young adults that meet our program criteria, and we're working diligently to engage them. The second part of our program component, which I think is the most relevant to this conversation, is we have a team of 6 resource coordinators who are cultivating relationships with companies and corporations to create pipelines for employment opportunities in industries like customer service, hospitality, warehousing, and hopefully now green jobs. But our team has done a great job of securing employment partners. We've been working really closely with Centermark, Home Depot, AutoZone, AT&T, Flower Bakery. But like, a couple of the chiefs have said on this call, those are entry points, right? Those are low wage jobs. And what we're really looking for is to be able to build relationships with groups that could provide sustainable careers and offer real growth opportunities for the population that we serve. But in addition to that, we also facilitate access to healthcare and mental health, housing, and education. And then our final portion of our program is response, where we're responding to incidents of violence that are happening across the city of Boston. But we're really excited about this opportunity with working more closely with Chief White Hammond and her team to bring this initiative here to Boston, which we feel like would add great value to one of what I think is Boston's most marginalized community, which are young men between the ages of 18 to 35 years old. So we're really excited about this. And we got, like I said, a roster of 360 kids, so we could fill that 30 in a heartbeat.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Talia. And I think this is another space where, I think it was in last year's budget that we were able to work collectively and kind of expand that resource support role. And I think thinking about how we knit SOAR into these actual job opportunities, this is a really good next.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Go next to Rashad from YEE, one of my favorite departments.
That's always great to hear, Council Bach. Thank you, Council Bach and Chief White Hammond. Just thank you for your vision and just your leadership around this effort. As mentioned, my name is Rashad Cope, the Director of the Department of Youth Engagement and Employment. And I just want to offer really just words of support to continue to emphasize the importance of this effort. One of the major areas of the work of our department is really around workforce development and employment opportunities that help inform early career and educational choices for young people. The City of Boston's commitment to youth and young adult workforce development has been and continues to be a major priority. As some of you may know, every year the city invests millions of dollars to ensure young people, both ages 15 to 18 and young adults, ages 19 to 24, have access to summer and school year job opportunities through the Mayor's Youth Employment Program. That is in partnership with ABCD, Boston PIC, John Hancock, MLK Scholars, and Youth Options Unlimited under OWD. And though these efforts are critical for short-term career exploration and work readiness, we have always known that there is more work to be done to create pipeline and pathway opportunities into long-term careers that are economically sustainable, especially for our marginalized Black and Brown and disconnected young adults. Some, who we know have lived barriers that have always prevented them from being able to access workforce training and development opportunities. Over the past 5 years since I've been in my role, many of our conversations in the youth job space have been, how do we reduce inequality and how do we improve job quality experiences for the young people here in Boston? We are currently engaged in a research practice partnership with Northeastern just to figure this out. And Trem mentioned the work of Northeastern. We're hoping Northeastern can also play an evaluation role in this effort here. We do know that the work that lies ahead is grounded in ensuring greater intentionality and strengthening workforce and training for underrepresented young people. And we know our collective approach, it should be centered around providing the training and development to ensure young adults have the skills and credentials to compete for jobs in the emerging industries like the green space. And with YEE and with this Green Jobs initiative here, our goal is simple. It's job preparation, job placement, and job security. And the last piece is really around youth development. This is a youth development effort, and youth development is a trajectory framework. It requires a multifaceted approach through goal setting, building positive relationships, mentorship, guidance and coaching, reskilling and upskilling, and making holistic support and services available, and providing access to resources and opportunities. And this Green Jobs Initiative, is exciting and is set to be an incredible youth development model that will emerge here in Boston. So with that, we are excited to be here for the launch of what I hope will be the coming of more focused pathway models. So this is just not the only one that Boston needs to launch. There's more opportunities that are aligned with this that we need to begin to think more critically about for young people, but most importantly for the young adults here in Boston. So just wanted to share those words of support. Thank you all, and that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Rashad. And thank you to everybody. I think just seeing the number of departments that are going to have a handle in this and how much we're doing already in the city and the way that those things can get pulled together for this Green Jobs Initiative is really encouraging and exciting. It's a balance between saying there are some things we can learn from Philadelphia and also we're not starting from zero here in Boston. There's a lot of really strong work folks have been doing already. So I want to appreciate that. All right, we're going to jump into councilor questions now. And I'll go to my colleagues first and then back cleanup. And then we've got some members of the public waiting to testify as well. So that'll be Councilor Flynn and then Councilor Braden. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilor Block, and thank you to the panelists for providing an excellent description of the program. So it was very informative to me, and I'm sure to the public as well. So my question, maybe I'll ask Dr. Falk this question. One area that I'm particularly interested in learning more about as a former probation officer at Superior Court. So, with this new economy, with the green economy, in opportunities in training and employment, one area that we both share and we both want to see expanded is young men, especially coming out of jail, coming out of prison. But is there a way to provide any training to them in these fields while they're still being held in custody, while they're in jail, while they're in prison, where we get them the training and experience in knowing about this field before they come out, so that there's a clearer path for them, and instead of starting at the very beginning when they get out. Maybe you presented it, and I apologize if I didn't hear it, but just wanted to see what your thoughts might be on that.
That's a great question, Counselor. I didn't mention that. So the short answer to your very difficult question is that there is a way. Do we have the way currently? Not right now. I think as a city, we're doing a better job at trying to formalize relationships with both the House of Corrections and the Department of Corrections. I sit on a panel that's led by Representative Elagardo and Jamie Eldridge around how do we sort of formalize and sort of break down some of these sort of systemic issues that we have within the Department of Corrections. And we have some relationships with the House of Corrections in South Bay. But to answer your question right now, we do not have a way to provide that level of training. That's not to say that it's not possible. I just think it will just take a all hands-on approach to sort of have that meeting with both the House of Corrections and the Department of Corrections to have a curriculum that we can have someone who can facilitate within these institutions, but then also work with our reentry coordinators who are behind the wall to make sure that they can do a level of referrals and offer this opportunity to individuals who will be returning, especially those individuals returning within the next year and 18 months, or maybe 2 years, or even maybe even maxing out to 3 years, folks who would be returning to the city of Boston, letting them know that this opportunity is available, but also letting them know what the pathways are, and then giving everyone a sort of basic understanding and foundational knowledge or how they can enter into the industry when they release. But great question, sir. We don't have that yet, but I look forward to working with the council and the new administration to develop that type of training and curriculum that we can bring behind the wall.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor, and appreciate those comments and the work that you've done. Maybe just thinking outside the box, even maybe we could reach out to Steve Tompkins and see if there's a possibility of maybe even developing a pilot program and seeing what Steve's thoughts might be on how we can do a little bit of work while people are held in, because as you know, House of Correction, their sentence is 2.5 years or under. So those men are getting out, probably in the next year. So we want to just make sure that this field might be open to them, and at least they know about it, or at least they can have a point of contact so they can contact someone once they get out. But anyway, I just wanted to say thank you to the entire team here. It was a very good discussion, and I support it and will do everything I can to be helpful as well. So thank you, Council Bach. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Thank you for being here and for your support. And I know that Chief White-Hammond trailed the fact that they're going to look for another $7 million after the 4 that we provided. So there will be council collaboration sought going forward. Is that fair to say, Chief?
Yes, those ARPA funds are allowed to be used for up to 3 years. And I just think, as a former executive director myself, who left the work because I had what I called post-traumatic fundraising disorder, I would love to bring that person in and allow them to really focus on making sure the young folks we get are trained and supported and not hustling to always raise their budget. So thank you for mentioning that, Councilor Bach. I do think it's a real opportunity to allow them to focus on the work and to use the ARPA funds that we have to reach those people who have been most deeply impacted.
Great. Thanks so much. Councilor Braden.
Thank you. I can't tell you how excited I am with this conversation this morning. I think it's wonderful. And I appreciate that there's a lot of things already in place in Boston, so we can hopefully hit the floor running on this one. I feel that I just have a question about how soon young people can get into these programs. I often feel that some of our young people get very restless by the time they're about 16 years old, and moving into some sort of a program like this rather than sitting at a desk in school might be a much more productive track for them. I know from my experience in Northern Ireland that at the age of 16, young people can choose to go into this sort of career development, job training, rather than persist in going to school every day. And this sounds like a really radical suggestion, but I just wondered about the age cutoff, or whether high school students could start to participate in this sort of career track, and then as they graduate from school, go right into ready to go right into these jobs. Any thoughts being given to that?
So we did have a meeting with Madison. So we've the two schools that we are looking at as referring agencies. So most of we know that just sitting on this call, there's enough referrals to get us started with the 30. So that just, I want to be transparent about that. But the two schools that we've started conversations with are Boston Green Academy and Madison Park. And those are the two schools that we're looking at having direct referrals. Currently, the conversation is about their seniors. Because we're not yet at the point where I'm not sure the BPS would be wanting to open a conversation about having young people not finish. But we have been sort of saying, is there any way that seniors could actually be given time to start? And maybe we'll have to figure this all out, but we're talking about the starting date being either April or May. And the reason being, once the industry academies start, you want to make sure we have enough unit hours before the snow starts hitting, because a lot of this work is outdoor work, and it's fine to be finishing up in the snow, but it's not a great idea to be starting with the snow. And so an April launch would be preferable in a lot of ways in terms of the kinds of training. So we have already started that conversation with Madison, and they have some infrastructure that might make it possible. But I think after that, I mean, what your name, I don't know, Councilor Braden, if you got to work with my husband a lot, but he is a big fan of us like pushing the envelope around what really counts as education, what allows young people to complete their requirements. The one thing I will say that Philly Power Corps did caution us on is if young people have really serious, like they're not able to read, there's some basic computational things. What they've said is if you don't address some of those things, they can actually stop people down the line. So we'll just need to figure out what's the bare set of skills that young people need to be coming in with, so that we don't train them and then find that they get into the job and there's some barrier down the line. So we'll be talking that through, but I think we want to lower that age as much as we possibly can while making sure that they have a skill set to move forward.
Yeah, it's that I'd love to have that conversation with your husband about what qualifies as an education.
Oh yeah, he would love to talk to you all day.
Yeah, and very often it's the young men who get very restless and, they don't see the point in all this schooling and they drop out anyway. So it's if we could capture those young people who are at risk of dropping out maybe and channel that energy into a career pathway. That anyway, I'm very excited. I hope we can support the projects with money. And the other thing I'm thinking about here in the city, and also particularly in Alston Brighton, is we have a lot of speculative investment in lab development, and I see a lot of jobs in that sphere. So I think we should be thinking about a pipeline to developing our young people to take advantage of those sort of lab technology jobs that don't necessarily require a PhD in biochemistry or anything, but it's those mid-level jobs that are good paying jobs, but we need to make sure that our young people have the adequate preparation in our schools. So I'm thinking a partnership and a really serious conversation with BPS is in order as well, so that everybody's marching in the same direction, so to speak.
Yeah, and I do want to highlight Catherine Walsh, who's the sustainability coordinator at BPS, has been so supportive, really, really helpful in this. I do want to take this moment really quickly. Also, I thought I already was able to acknowledge Lindsay Santana in our office. I also want to acknowledge Kat Eschel, who's not one of the testifiers, but the two of them I got back from Philly and I was like, we're going to do this. In 2 weeks, we're going to get started. And they have been hustling, moving heaven and earth behind the scenes. I know Trent mentioned the good slides. The slides are not great because of me. It's because the staff is here, supportive, moving it along. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the fact that I have amazing staff who make me look good and also are as inspired and excited about these crazy ideas and moving it forward. So
yeah, we love crazy ideas. This is how the world moves forward. The other question I had, having a background in special education as a physical therapist, etc., was wondering about, in terms of a subset of these students or young people, students with disabilities. Are we thinking about this might be further down the line. I know we're talking about a pilot program, but I really would like us to think about addressing the needs for some employment opportunities for young people with disabilities as well. Because I know that's I hear from parents that once the kids age out of school, that very often it's very difficult to get them job employment and gainfully employed. And they have a lot to bring to the table, many of them. So that's another aspect we can talk about, maybe a whole other hearing on that. So
yeah, I would love to continue that conversation. We're not in that space yet. And one of the challenges, also with younger folks is a number of the industries we're looking at do require an ability to use power tools, which which is a bit of a challenge if folks are under 18 or folks have any physical challenges. But again, Power Corps extends all the way. They have park rangers, there's other options. So I think whatever we get started with, we don't have to end there by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, very good. This is very exciting, and thank you for your leadership, and thank you to Councillor Bach for her leadership in this space as well. This is very exciting. Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. Chief White-Hammond, I was wondering if maybe I thought it might be helpful for us to talk a little bit more about kind of where folks end up, because we've talked a bunch in this conversation about the recruitment and kind of how people come in and get trained. But I feel like for folks who are watching at home, I wanted to expand a little bit, and maybe you could build on this. I think part of what was exciting to me at Power Corps in Philly is that it has been part of a significant expansion of public jobs. There's a whole new green stormwater infrastructure division in their water department, which sort of is charged with both installing and then maintaining these substantial, whether you're talking about rain gardens, whether you're talking about, lots of tree plantings and stuff like that, those become part of kind of the a new category of assets, and they're managed by an expansion in staff that then has been significantly drawing from Power Corps. You referenced the park rangers, an area where both in Philly and here there's been challenges with retention and training that a good program might be able to meet. As you know, it comes up all the time from the council side that we get frustrated that there's our arborist Max is everyone's favorite city employee, but we need to clone him. But the question of, can we have a program like this that really is allowing us to expand city arborists, is allowing us to have experts in the city who could be dealing with whether it's tree pruning or this emerald ash borer outbreak, the vaccination of the trees and stuff. It would be great if we didn't have to contract so much of that work out, and we could give it to trained folks here. And then I think that at the same time, also you were referring to the fellowships, and I wanted to land on this point again, just for people in the nonprofit space. We're like, well, how does this work with us? One of the things that Philly does is it does that foundation training, and then there are these industry academies for the public facing jobs, and then for a few of the industries like solar, like masonry, et cetera. But also if there are organizations where we can place people directly, that's another model that they use. And one of the things that I think is really important about this work is that the kind of the wraparound community that we've been describing that supports people getting in and going through the training is also there for them. Like when the graduates go and work in another context in this world, that people are still checking up on them, that if there's an issue with the employer, that they've got a support system that's trying to help solve the issue. I think that's really important. And then of course, obviously, we also just want lots of private hiring. I think we all know that a lot of the building retrofit work that's going to happen is going to be on the private side. And the question is, who gets hired to do those jobs? And it's exciting that in Philadelphia, there are now, contractors. There is inevitably both outside contract work for the city. Chief Barros-Milner, you touched on this. And also, obviously, there's lots of private work. And now there's a bunch of contracting firms that are staffed by, and in some cases owned by, Philly Power Corps graduates. So I think that's a really key piece of the puzzle too. So I just want to stress to people that in terms of where we would hope graduates of a program like this would go, it really is an all of the above. Create new public jobs, create folks to meet the needs that we know we're going to do outside contracting with, and also feed our Boston graduates into, growing private ecosystem for all this stuff, and hopefully make Boston a place that other cities and towns around the country are trying to recruit people from. So I don't know, Chief, if you wanted to speak to that, or if any of the other chiefs or directors on the line, if there's anything about that you wanted to amplify.
And I will defer to Chief Barros-Milner because I know she's been looking at this a lot, but I just want to know I can say internally, I am at times concerned that we have some of the positions within my own department do not meet the standard of the kind of wage respect that I would expect for any job. And I think people, we have a mismatch between places where we need more skills and whether or not we're making sure workers have those skills. As you mentioned, there's a huge backlog in terms of tree planting and tree maintenance. And the question is, why can't we be employing residents of the city of Boston who've been locked out often in the past to do the work that needs to be done? And so I think, one of the things that blew me away when I was in Philly, where I asked a group of young men, sort of, what are you doing? Tell me a little bit about it. They started talking to me about the rotation of tree pruning season, why the city had moved to rainwater gardens, what it takes to maintain those gardens. And I'm sitting here saying, this is a level of awareness about water and flooding and maintenance that, to be honest with you, is not yet integrated into our own parks department. We are building these parks as not just places of recreation, but also as flooding management systems. But because we have not trained our own folks, we then end up paying outside contractors to maintain these facilities when our people could be maintaining them, and we could be using those same resources to augment their salaries so that we can be paying everybody a living wage. So I think that there are so many win-wins. And I think, I know the council, I have gotten more than enough advocacy from the council around this issue of trees and what we need to do. And so I think I can say with relative certainty that one of our industry academies, when we launch, will be around urban forestry and tree care, because I think that it will, again, when we have an unmet need, why wouldn't we fill that need first and foremost by the young people in our city that have often been locked out? And I would be honored to be in my neighborhood. So often I see people doing construction in my neighborhood, doing work in my neighborhood that are not from my neighborhood. I want to see the young people that I worked with at Project Hip Hop, the young people that are part of my congregation. I'd like to see those young people be part of the solution, particularly in our neighborhoods like Roxbury, like Dorchester, like Chinatown, where flooding is real, not in the future, but right now. And so I think that it's really exciting to be able to look at that for city jobs. And there are other institutions, like the state just put a ton of money around weatherization jobs, and they have had challenges in the past, making sure that our folks got in. Could we not be a place where we do the foundational work to make sure that young people are ready? And then we help the state to meet its objectives, their objectives of diversifying the weatherization workforce by providing them young people who are ready to do that work. So there's so many opportunities. I'm not worried about the pipeline of jobs. And I'm quite frankly not worried about the pipeline of young people, because this team, folks, we have connection to young people across the city. And so now all we got to do is do that little key, not unimportant, but very crucial part of making sure we build the curriculum and the opportunities that connect the young people with the jobs that are available. So yeah, and as Councilor Bach said, we can start right now in jobs, city jobs that could use this.
Great, thanks so much. Chief Barris-Milner, did you want to speak to this at all?
I think Chief White-Hammond said it completely, but I think that any time when you have the opportunity to help the supply meet the demand, right, and do the necessary interventions so that our local residents can benefit from these opportunities, I just think it's something we need to do. And I think we have the unique opportunity, given that the city itself has these opportunities, that we can do it in-house, right? And I think that that's what is really hard for us to do when it's outside. And so, I think that this is, I feel like I'm just like, okay, we need to do this for all these other industries too, but like, let's start here. And I would love to also just think about the supplier side in terms of contractors, as the city undertakes retrofitting for its own buildings, but also we have a call out for the entire city of Boston buildings to be retrofitted. Those are opportunities that are happening right now. And I think that, again, I don't want to detract from this conversation, but it's something I just want to flag for especially you, Councilor Bach and Councilor Braden, that I think we need to be on that right now to do something similar for minority and women-owned local contractors that are in, the HVAC fields or electrical or, some of the fields that will be critical for retrofitting our buildings, and make sure that they're getting the necessary certifications and training, and also the direct connection to opportunities. So I think that that's going to be a huge area of opportunity for our local businesses as well.
Great.
Councilor, if I may just quickly add to echo both of our chiefs' responses. 3 years ago, we looked at collective bargaining within various city agencies because we did a retirement rate analysis to see how many job openings there will be throughout the city based on the retirement. And we found in 5 to 7 years, depending on which departments, there's going to be a retirement rate of 17 to 25%. Some departments is 33%. And to me, that's a crisis, but that's a different story. And so I also think that this power core is extremely timely because some of those collective bargaining agreements have to be renewed, especially under a new administration. So for example, when we looked at Parks and Recreation collective bargaining, we didn't make it in time because they just signed their 3-year collective bargaining. So that 3 years is up. And so, for example, within their collective bargaining, you could have a provision that says you can hire X, Y, and Z, and then your third hire could be a graduate from the power core if that person is qualified. And so those provisions can be put into collective bargaining, for example. I know that when we looked at Boston Housing Authority, their collective bargaining for certain jobs were every other. So one job is from labor who are benched, and then the other is from management. So management from BHA gets to pick and choose who they want for that job. The other example is that Boston Water and Sewer, which is a huge, great employer, they have a magnificent career mobility path within their training program, and they don't have a collective bargaining in terms of entry-level hires. And so every department is different on how they hire permanent jobs. And so this is really timely as we look at that. So I wouldn't leave some of those tools out as we're looking for placements, because city jobs are great jobs. And we want to make sure that our residents, qualified residents, get first dips at these jobs as well. We've done similar work with MassDOT, the MBTA, and also the airport and TSA. So there is a way to do it. It's just many mechanisms behind learning about it.
Thank you so much, Trin. Yeah, and I strongly agree. I'm a big believer that collective bargaining agreements are also policy documents, and that there are many important ways for us to absolutely honor our workers in our departments and give people strong contracts that protect them as workers in the city, and think about how we're making the access to those excellent jobs and protections much more equitable. And as you know, I'm standing in for my colleague, Councilor O'Malley, at this point, since this is the Environment Department, but I am the chair of Ways and Means, which reviews all the CBAs, and that's a very important thing to me. So thank you for raising that. I think it's an unusual situation, as you say, that we are in a position where all of those negotiations are up at the moment of administration transition. So, and at the moment of us trying to kick this off. So, you know, shame on us if we don't take advantage of that synergy. I guess one other question for you, Trin, would just be if you could speak a little bit, and I mean the same, anybody else if you want to jump in, but one of the things I was thinking about in terms of it's amazing that we can provide these community college credits and support. It feels like as we build out this ecosystem, one of the things we're going to want to do is have a kind of recursive feedback loop around what certifications are actually helpful to people. Because I'm always a big believer of like, don't just have people earning things that like, I mean, I think the chief alluded to it, like are a certificate, but then nobody actually wants that for their jobs, right? And then conversely, of course, if there are certifications that are really great and we create good equitable pathways into them, those are certifications that we can then, list when we're hiring for contracts, when we're doing other, right? Like there can be a really good connection there. And it seems to me like we're going to want to have a feedback loop thinking about the industry academies and the work here with our community college partners and also with Madison Park, right? And Green Academy on the other side, right? Like what could students be doing that prepares them? And I don't know if there's anything like that in our current programs where we kind of loop back to the community colleges and say, hey, we've had a bunch of young people take the certification, but it turns out that the employers kind of want something a little bit different. Have you guys thought about, or I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yes, just quickly, I also defer to my colleagues too. I'm really sorry. I have a bad cold and a sinus infection. So if I skip through some words or I can't hear you, it's because of that infection. That's a really important question, Councilor Bach. So I really appreciate it because we're always looking for quality and efficiency and effectiveness. So we don't want to train people just for the sake of training people. And so I think one is that the key question about whether or not that certification is needed by the labor market or employers is really important. That's why we only vet certifications on the fact that if that college or that entity engage employers in designing that certification. And so if someone just says we just whipped it up, we wouldn't put them on our preferred list. And then the second piece is that we also look at whether or not that training could be transferred or created as stackable credits that already gets you into and a leg up into an associate degree if that person decides to take it. So we carefully look at that. The third option is that we also look at quality industry training and work with community colleges and four-year colleges and say, hey, instead of making this student or this graduate go through all these steps again, can you look at this curriculum and see what you can matriculate into your credits so that they can have a leg up into that degree? So you don't have to restart that person or that graduate because that person doesn't have time. That third piece is called articulation agreements, and Madison Park has 15 that no one ever uses or reads or who cares, but I love those things. And they're like gems and tools. Why not, right? I mean, you've already worked a year and half the time you worked are already matriculated credits into Roxbury Community College or BATC, and you're 60% there to completion. And so, that third piece is that we have tools already. If we want to create articulation agreements, it's very timely, mainly because the state has to look at it too, and the faculty has to approve for those credits. And so the short answer, quick answer is yes, we have a vetting process. It's not standard. And then the other piece I do want to let you know is that in the last year and a half, we worked with the Environment Department to put together a repository of community college certifications and degrees as it relates to this green or clean energy environment action plan. And so what we can do is go back and look at that literature scan and that repository and go through a vetting process one by one. And then we match it up with the industry academy that Chief White-Hammond had spoken about in one of her slides. So no reason to reinvent the wheel. we have a lot of those tools and we start plugging them into that industry. So there is a process, we can make it happen. And those are the 3 areas in which we can look at training certifications, employer engagement, and articulation agreements. More than happy to talk offline on that. Hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Trin. That's really helpful. Rashad, a question from me to you. I'm almost done. I know we've got folks waiting to testify, so just letting you know that we'll get to you shortly. Rashad, one of the things I find myself thinking about, we talked before about we have this great little ecosystem of green jobs focused programs in SuccessLink. And I guess this is a question for you and also the chief. Like, it feels to me like, and those are already existing, and they work with a bunch of our young people. And obviously, to Councilor Braden's point, those tend to be, those are younger young people, right? They're mostly teenagers. But I wonder if there's a way, as we really get this green jobs program rolling, again, to kind of like connect there. One of the things that are that I know you've been trying to expand capacity on at YEE is the ability to kind of analyze the programming and think about what's setting you up in the workforce development direction, like you said, like really creating a pipeline. And I wonder if there's a way to almost like, provide some focused support to those SuccessLink programs we have that are really in this space, whether it's, exposing their graduates to the existence of the program or just kind of like thinking, or kind of like with Madison Park, thinking about how those are turned into, like, those give you the right pre-skills or anything. I don't know if you guys have talked about sort of the YE end of all of this yet.
Yeah, Councilor Bog, I think that's a great question. I think one thing that we can begin to think about doing is establishing a standard framework, that is focused on very specific career areas as it aligns with the SuccessLink program. So we know that many young people, are working within our nonprofit community-based organizations, such as Speak for the Trees, ACE, who offer environmental opportunities for young people. I think if we can begin to put in place a standard framework that ensures that young people are green jobs ready as they're participating in those summer jobs, I think it can help them be prepared for transition into this Power Corps model. So I think that that's one way that we can think about streamlining, the 15 to 18-year-olds that are working in these organizations. And, as we're thinking about expanding this, doing that over the next year or so. And I also think that could also be something that we look at some of our other, industries as well, that are supporting summer jobs.
Yeah, one of the things that came to mind for me was that one of the things I've heard from our SuccessLink programs in the green jobs area has been, we wish we had, as you know, right, there are those supervisor roles, and often there's sort of like one, which are slightly older folks. And there's often kind of 1 to 10, at most is the ratio. And one of the things I've heard is, hey, and Chief White-Hammond mentioned this, right? Like, we need these, like, to do some of the work with trees, we need real tools, and then you need real supervision, right? And so, so there's like kind of like fundraising to pay folks a little more or get more of those kind of group leaders. And I was thinking, Reverend Mariama, that, with obviously Philly's launched that youth work industry academy, thinking about, is there a way for some of the folks who run through this program eventually to maybe be reaching back and helping, run those SuccessLink programs, and sort of 2 birds, 1 stone, right? For them, it's a placement in youth work. For the SuccessLink programs, it's, more of the support that they've looked for. And it's not just a pair of hands, it's actually somebody who's really well-trained and well set up to be a mentor. So I just wanted to kind of flag that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think Power Corps is doing amazing work, and I was blown away. And I think we have an even richer ecosystem here that would allow us to scale up faster with even more opportunity. I mean, much of what they had to build. I don't think we actually have to build all of what they've built, because I think we have a lot here. So I think that that's an example of another Aside, the industry academy is one piece. Those are people we're tracking in to go work in the Parks Department, to go work in the Boston Water Sewer. Yes, we can do that. But they're also what they have listed as like fellowships and post-secondary. Some people are going to do the work and say, now I know I really want to do that. And that I can't do in a 6-month industry academy. So I'm going to want to go off to work. But also we might find young people who are actually really great at training other young people, who are like just really engaging. And we might be able to say, yeah, the best fit for you is to now do a fellowship with ACE doing, they used to do, this whole piece around planting, they did these seed balls and they would plant wildflowers in a lot of places. Like maybe that's the right next mix, right, for you. So I think that I think what's really key for me is there's a lot of opportunities out there. There is no central place for young people to figure out where all of them are. And there are a lot of people who want to bring young people in who then have to do all of the youth and support work themselves for 3 positions. I don't think that makes sense. If we can do all the support work and get all the information in the same place, so somebody could sit down and say, when we did that rotation at the parks the other day, I really noticed you were doing this. You could go on this training that, set you up for the parks department, but would urban farming be something you're interested in? And now, instead of the Urban Farming Institute having to do all the work for the 3 positions they have, we can just say, out of this 100 young people, we think it's a good chance 3 of them are going to be interested, and we'll send them there. So I think a lot of the work, in addition to making sure that the curriculum is aligned, as you said, that we're not giving people pieces of paper that don't go anywhere. I think this is allowing a clearinghouse so that all of the rich pieces of the ecosystem, but that are smaller, do not have to build all of this infrastructure around it. I think we can answer some of that. We can source to the YEE folks that are there. We can also take young people out of that. I think there's just a lot of opportunities. And I think that this, in many ways, we're going to have a hub and spoke model where we have some things centered that allow everybody to plug in, but also allow everybody to expand out in multiple different directions. So I think the possibilities, quite frankly, are endless. I love Philly. My dad grew up there. My grandma was there. So I spent a lot of time in there, and I am all for what they're doing. I do think because of the richness of what we already have, we're going to be able to get there pretty quick. And I do think the other plus is that we're already talking Philly, but they're also expanding to Pittsburgh. And so we have also been saying, can we be part of a network? Because I hope that in 2 to 3 years, we can also be supporting to help other folks around the state. Because quite frankly, I can't tell you how many folks that I grew up with that now live in Brockton and Randolph and New Bedford, Fall River, places that also need the support. So I think if you care about this population, I do care about the city. This is my home. But I also know many people who've been pushed out of here already because they can't afford it. And I do want to ask, can what we build here extend and support and follow the folks who grew up here their whole lives, but aren't able to remain? And so I think there are endless possibilities. And I think, again, this is an all-star team of folks who have relationships, who've been doing the work. So I think the possibilities are endless. I do think what we're going to need to, in the short term, we're going to need to figure out building up this model. I do think very early on, how we convene people, how we think about the possibilities, how we create those linkages so that they're clear, we've made agreements, and that young people can navigate them. We should do the work so that young people can navigate these relatively quickly because we've put all of the pieces in place.
Great, thank you so much, Chief. And I'll just amplify that I feel like, and Dr. Falk and Talia, if either of you want to weigh in on this, I think both of you in your comments reflected the fact that we're we're not lacking for young people who want these job opportunities, right? And I think sometimes to the chief's point, there's kind of a funny thing where you talk to folks in a lot of the places where they might have 1, 2, 3 jobs, and they say, "Oh, I'm having a really hard time finding anybody." And then in your guys' programs, it's like, "Gee, we're having a hard time finding a job for these folks." And it's like, we've got to be able to solve for that in a way that drives the city's equity agenda and the city's climate agenda forward. I don't know if either of you wanted to say anything else, because I know soon we're going to move to public testimony. So I kind of want to give folks on the administration just a chance if there's any last stuff that you wanted to get in on.
Councilor, just briefly, I think to that point, I think one of the things we're trying to move to as all of our city departments is that level of coordination of knowing where opportunities are, not only internally, but so we can convey that externally to the external partners that we work with. And also just a reminder that as a city, we've done this level of work before 2 generations ago, but there just wasn't a skill set or a placement attached to it. When we had Boston Youth Cleanup Corp, that's really, we were doing some level of agriculture, and we were doing all those things, but there was no that this could be an opportunity for you as a career moving forward. So and Rashad and I are like our first jobs were those that was our first experience. So they're the generation of young people. If again, we don't want them doing what we were doing, like cleaning up tires and things like that, but there are skills that we can innovate, that we can build in for that school age population that they can then transition them to that power corp. But I was a red shirt, and I'm pretty sure if you poll a lot of people, they could say that their first experience working for the city and working outside was that red shirt experience, and how I wish I could still find my red shirt. So there was sort of some camaraderie built around that. So we can even innovate that process for this next generation to give them just a skill set that could then be a career path. I think that can be an easy win, not an easy win, but an easier win for us as well, because we already have some level of experience doing so.
Shout out to the red shirts. And Dr. Fox, the BYCC, Boston Youth Cleanup Corps, is still, the sign for it is still on the building that the tree division sits in. So I went over to hang out with them and drop off some cookies, and I saw all the stuff from when it was BYCC is still there. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else in the administration, anyone want to say anything before? Otherwise, I think, and sorry, I should check actually. I think Councilor Braden and Councilor Flynn are both fine. So I'll be going to public testimony next. So just want to give anybody from the panel a chance to say any closing words. All good? All right, great. Well, thank you. Thank you to all the folks in the administration for making 2 hours of your time today. Really appreciate it. And even many, many, many more hours in actually working on this. And I'm excited about the way it's coming together. And I know there's some really important next steps. Obviously, hiring an executive director who, like Reverend Mariama said, can really own this 100% of the time. I mean, it does seem to me like the hub and spokes model is how we're going to get a lot of people into jobs, but the hub's got to be really strong, right? Like there's got to be a real clear sense of purpose and alignment there. And so yeah, it's we're gonna all need to put our feelers out to figure out who should be applying for that executive director job. And if you're watching this at home and you know somebody, encourage them to apply. All right, I am going to go now to public testimony. Thanks again. I will go first to let's see, I got to pull up my list here. First to David Quealy from the Codman Square NDC, and then up after Dave is Kendra, and then Julia.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Technology works once in a while for me. I'm Dave Quealy. I'm the Director of Eco Innovation at Codman Square NDC, and want to thank the Council for the opportunity to speak today. We're thrilled that the city, under the leadership of Councilor Bach, Mayor-elect Wu, the City Council, Chief White-Hammond, and others, have funded the Boston Conservation Corps, giving Boston's young people a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for meaningful opportunities to learn and earn, and begin to roll back the impacts of Boston's history of systemic exclusion. As Chief White-Hammond intimated and Audre Lorde said, there is no such thing as a single issue struggle. So it's clear that all these ideas we've been talking about today connect. It's also clear that there's a need to start and scale up this program through consistent and increasing funding. Members of Codman Square NDC's People of Color Climate Justice Group, a group of local activists that's been meeting for almost 2 years to identify climate and environmental issues of concern to Dorchester residents, have surfaced the following key priorities: clean air, energy efficient and affordable homes, access to green jobs and training, better connecting young people at Madison Park High School to paid learn and earn opportunities, increased connection between BCC and an expanded green curriculum in schools, expanded opportunities to connect BIPOC contractors with young people that have green job skills, such as air sealing, mini split insulation, jobs that don't require a four-year degree, but which will expand the ability of those contractors to better respond to city RFP. The application of learned skills to use to improve BPS, Boston Public School buildings, and community-owned and managed open spaces, and an industry academy-style training for the next generation of city arborists. We're thrilled that the BCC is being launched to address these issues and hope there can be funding allocated to related programs, such as Codman Square NDC's Green Infrastructure Training and Certification Program, which has now graduated 29 people, supporting them in becoming nationally certified as green infrastructure practitioners, with some already employed in the green roof industry with good paying jobs. Green infrastructure practitioners, whether they are public sector employees or public or private sector employees, graduate with the ability to do green infrastructure construction, inspection, and maintenance, helping the city to meet its green infrastructure, climate, and equity needs. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and we'll submit a letter after this hearing.
Thank you so much, Dave, and thank you for all your work in this space. Programs like what Codman Square NDC is doing is part of the reason that, as was discussed, we have a rich ecosystem here that can let us get the ground running. So appreciate you.
Thank you, Councilor.
All right, next up is Kendra Beaver. And Kendra, I don't see Pat Alvarez, so I think you might be reading her testimony. Please do go ahead if so. And then it'll be Julia from the ENC and then Liz Visa from the Friends of Public Art next. So, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to have some brief additional comments to emphasize what David said, and then I will read Pat's testimony on her behalf. So hello, everyone. My name is Kendra Beaver. I'm the Climate Justice Coordinator for the Fairmount Indigo CDC Collaborative, which is an umbrella organization holding Codman Square NDC, Dorchester Bay EDC, and Southwest Boston CDC. For my personal testimony, I would like to say that Boston Conservation Corps opportunities to train young people in next generation green infrastructure skills should include ample programs for jobs that don't require four-year degrees. The Corps training should also facilitate job pipelines stemming from connections to Boston Public Schools, and especially Madison Park High School, complemented by an expanded and practical skill building green curriculum throughout all levels of BPS. And that the training and application of skills should then be applied to improve BPS buildings and community-owned or managed open spaces. Thank you. And on behalf of Pat Alvarez, who is the Assistant Director, of the Southwest Boston CDC, this is her testimony. For the past 13 years, the Southwest Boston CDC has operated the Green Team Youth Jobs and Environmental Stewardship Program, which is essentially a youth green conservation corps that includes environmental education, urban wild restoration work, job readiness, and life skills training. Having run our program for 13 years, we have deep experience and deep roots in the community. We hope that the city's new Green Corps program will continue to contract with experienced community-based organizations like ourselves through the DYEE or another department, so we can continue to employ youth ages 15 to 18 in a well-rounded program that prepares youth for success in the green industries or any career path they want to pursue. We would also like additional funding that would allow us to expand our program to employ a great number of teens and or older youth ages 18 through 24. As a snapshot of what the Green Team program does, youth participate in a number of activities, including clean urban wild entrances and perimeters, removing trash and construction debris, identifying and properly removing invasive species, planting and caring for native species, pruning trees, creating and restoring walking trails, and creating swales for water runoff, and educating residents about proper use and care for woods. Some things that the youth learn include proper use of landscaping tools, the causes and impacts of climate change, and the role that conservation land plays in mitigating the effects of climate change. For young people to want to save our environment, they must love it, and to love it, they must experience it. So the opportunity for youth to learn about and care for woodlands is critical. And additionally, youth learn how to succeed at work and in life through skill building trainings for more general career skills. This benefits the community because woodland tree canopy is as important to mitigating climate change impacts as reducing building and car emissions. Tree canopy cools and cleans the air, and their roots clean groundwater and help prevent flooding. Additionally, regular maintenance is required to keep the woods healthy, and programs like ours are essential since the Boston Parks Department does not have a full maintenance staff to care for the city's 35 urban wilds, 8 of which are in Hyde Park, which is one of the neighborhoods that Southwest Boston serves, or the Southwest Boston CDC serves. Finally, I would like to stress that a successful program requires adequate staff capacity. Our teens work outside, often in hot or rainy weather, depending on the day, doing physically demanding work with heavy, sharp landscaping tools. They need constant support and motivation and close supervision. At least one experienced, skilled crew leader is required for every 4 to 5 youth we have. And crew leaders train, supervise, and work alongside the youth daily. They address behavior issues and personal issues affecting youth performance and team dynamics. And that college interns are not a substitute for experienced staff. Thank you for your time. That was both my and Pat's testimony. You are welcome to visit the Green Team working this coming summer. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kendra, for both testimonies. Next up, we've got Julia, and then it will be Liz Visa, and then David Meshulam from Speak for the Trees, and then Win Constantini. Julia, you have the floor.
Hi. First, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak and share public comment today. My name is Julia, and I'm the policy coordinator for the Emerald Necklace Conservancy. We'd like to thank Councilor Bach and Chief White-Hammond for their continued leadership and consideration of the youth and our environment. The Conservancy is supportive of the $4 million being allocated in this year's budget for the Youth Green Jobs Training Program. Annually, the Emerald Necklace Conservancy employs dozens of youth through our youth education programs. Since the program's launch in 2008, we've engaged over 400 youth in arboriculture, horticulture, and ecological restoration. Opportunities such as our programming have inspired our youth and helped kickstart their environmental careers. While we understand that the program is in its beginning phases of planning,
Once, I think we just somehow lost Julia over 1 second.
Hi,
Julia, I think, sorry, we got you kicked, somehow you got kicked out for a second there. So can you go back to the beginning of the sentence while we understand?
Yes. While we understand the program is in its beginning phases of planning, we urge you to include diverse environmental jobs and opportunities. Green jobs are much more than landscaping. Green jobs are also present in geographic information systems, urban planning, research, preservation, and advocacy. Increasing understanding citywide of what a green job is and the effort and expertise that they require will help ensure equitable opportunities for our youth that act as a pipeline for long-term and good-paying green jobs across the city. Again, thank you so much for your thoughtful approach to the program's design, and we look forward to working together to push for equitable opportunities across Boston.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. And again, thanks so much for all of the Emerald Necklace Conservancy does.
Thank you.
Next up, David from Speak for the Trees.
Oh, I think it was Liz, actually.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. You were right. It was Liz, and then it will be David. Thank you.
That's okay.
Sorry, Liz. Didn't
Not
mean
a
to cut you.
problem. Thank you, David. Well, good afternoon. I am here as an ally preaching to the choir, clearly. My name is Liz Vees, and I'm president of Friends of the Public Garden. We have worked with the city for 51 years to renew, care, and advocate for our major Boston parks downtown, the Boston Common, the Public Garden, and Commonwealth Avenue Mall, where 7 million people come to love these spaces and realize how important they are in their lives. I'm also a member of the steering committee of Boston Park Advocates, which is a citywide network supporting and advocating for all of our green spaces in the city. And first of all, I want to thank you, Councilor Bach and Chief White-Hammond, for your inspiring leadership on this initiative. It was exciting to have you, Councilor, present at our forum, Boston Park Advocates Forum last January on green infrastructure and how to be resilient, climate resilient, block by block. And you presented this idea. And here we are less than a year later, and you're ready to implement it. So congratulations on your success for this and for all of our sakes. For decades, I have witnessed how workforce opportunities are traditionally underrepresented in the fields of green space management and maintenance and landscape design. That's why creating a city-level conservation corps for Boston is a milestone, not only for better green spaces, but also for Boston residents who are seeking long-term, good-paying green jobs. It is a way to raise awareness about the many opportunities in green careers and why these jobs have traditionally been underrepresented, and also why they're more important than ever. Engaging our youth in developing these skill sets in order to be part of the future health of their community is a wonderful endeavor, and we support you in doing all we can to help make this happen. Right now, global leaders are meeting in Glasgow to discuss how climate change has gone from a fringe issue to a global priority. And mitigating the impacts of climate change and biodiversity loss will depend on places like the green spaces in Boston and cities across the world. This exciting initiative is not just about access to green jobs, but the prospect of a greener economy and ultimately a more and better sustainable, more equitable future. The Conservation Corps would build that green jobs pipeline for Boston, providing training that could inspire future careers. And not only as arborists, and yes to more city arborists, I completely support what you have said is so critically needed, but also, as Julia mentioned, urban planners, landscape designers, and gardeners and engineers. There's so many equity-focused opportunities that we can open up here. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it is that Boston's green spaces are critically important to our physical health, our emotional well-being, and our community cohesion. We have city parks that are in great need of more regular maintenance than they currently receive. Many that don't have friends groups like the Friends who can commit to caring for the trees that are so important to our life. But we also have a whole category of green space in the city of Boston that gets no maintenance, our urban wilds. And this could be the perfect training ground for this effort, or one of them. This past summer, the Friends offered paid 8-week internships for college students to work in our parks, assessing our monuments and the social and political context of their creation, as well as mapping the horticulture beds in the garden to create interactive maps for public interpretation. They were thrilled to engage in the parks, to learn more about what it takes to care for them, and to feel that they were making a difference. We're looking forward to bringing on a youth team next summer to learn hands-on about what it takes to maintain public parks and to broaden their perspective and frankly have them fall in love with all of parks and the need for parks in our city. With this city-level conservation corps in place, the possibilities for our green spaces and our future work that comes with them are endless. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify.
Thanks so much. And thanks again for all the Friends do. I'm a daily appreciator of it. All right, now it's David, then Win Constantini, and then it'll be Trina, Mike, Martin, just so you know that I see you and you are coming up in the queue. So David, now you have 4.
Thank you, and a pleasure to be here today. And thank you for inviting us today to give testimony about this Conservation Corps. My name is David Meshulam. I'm Executive Director of Speak for the Trees Boston. I'm joined today to my right by Eva Paradiso, our new Education Coordinator and also the Program Director for our Teen Urban Tree Corps program this summer. Speak for the Trees is an urban and community forestry nonprofit here in Boston, and we are really, really excited for the opportunity to be part of this effort spearheaded by you, Councilor Bach, and the administration, to bring the Youth Conservation Corps program to Boston. And we're excited to share with you today what steps we've already taken over the past 3 years since our founding in 2018 to build youth leadership and skill-based learning for Boston youth in the field, specifically of urban forestry. A bit about us, for those of you I don't know, we are an organization focused on what we call tree equity. So we bring tree equity to Boston by celebrating, preserving, and planting trees in the city. And since 2018, we have been engaging Boston residents through such events. We have one on Saturday, our last tree planting event. I invite you all to come. It's at the Fairview Cemetery in Hyde Park. So we do tree plantings, tree giveaways. We do community engagement and education. And we're here today to share with you a bit about our Teen Urban Tree Corps program. The Teen Urban Tree Corps program is a 6-week paid summer program for Boston youth. Participants spend 25 hours a week learning about the importance of trees, getting to know their neighborhood forests, and advocating for the community's health and well-being. The program exposes teens to a variety of urban forestry-related careers and engages them in environmental justice advocacy work within their own neighborhoods. As a culmination of their experience, the teens this year work in small groups and have created tree planting and maintenance proposals for their communities, incorporating best practices they learned throughout the summer. And I'm super excited that this year we're actually able to support with DYEE support 5 teens to continue this work and actually implement these programs in their communities. We see this opportunity of a city-level conservation corps as a next step to building the workforce the city needs to grow our urban canopy and increase green infrastructure to create a more resilient Boston. We have started to create this and are excited to see it grow. So with that, I turn to Eva to share a little bit more about our program.
So this past summer, with the generous support from Boston's Department of Youth Engagement and Employment and John Hancock's MLK program, we hired a racially, economically, and geographically diverse group of 15 Boston teens who spent 6 weeks learning about urban forestry, tree equity, and tree care from professionals in the field of urban forestry. They met over 30 professionals and leaders in the field, including civic leaders, arborists, urban planners, landscape architects, and they even met leaders in the community, including Councilor Buck, Chief of Energy Environment, Reverend White Hammond, and Representative Liz Miranda. They also worked with tree warden Max Ford Diamond, learning proper pruning techniques, which they use to remove invasive species in Franklin Park. Although the teens are not able to join us today, we would like to read to you some testimony from them about their experience in the Teen Urban Tree Corps program. When asked how they benefited from the program, responses included, I learned about the heat island effect, climate justice, redlining, tree ID, and soil compaction from the Teen Urban Tree Corps program. The program changed my perception of climate change as something that will affect certain people more than others and changed my perception of how to stop it. I benefited from the Teen Urban Tree Corps program by getting a better understanding of how to properly take care of trees. I learned a little bit more about what I'm interested in and enjoy doing. Teen Urban Tree Corps participants were also asked how they thought Boston would benefit from the Teen Urban Tree Corps program. And they said, I believe that by having more people learn and advocate for trees, there will be more healthy trees in Boston. Boston will benefit from the Teen Urban Tree Corps program by having tree coverage, cooler air, and safer places to go. I expect that Boston will become more temperature regulated and that some residents will be more connected to nature because of the Teen Urban Tree Corps program. One teen said, this program encourages young people to care about their future.
So I know, Councilor Block, you had invited the teens to testify. Unfortunately, it's a school day and we didn't want to pull them away from their studies, but we hope that in the future they can join us. And we invite you to meet them. They'll be joining us in a couple of weeks in the fall program and then again next summer. So just to wrap up, our program provides an opportunity for Boston youth to learn about urban forestry, topics which are not commonly covered in school curriculum. The program literally and figuratively plants a seed in these youth about potential careers in urban forestry. So as the city works on developing and implementing its urban forest plan, which I think was mentioned today, includes a workforce development component, job opportunities in urban forestry will only increase both in the municipality, but also we know in the private sector. Creating an ecosystem of education, training, and opportunities will provide a strong next step to train and employ Boston residents to care for our trees. So I thank you for the opportunity to share, and I look forward to continued partnership in the future.
Great. Thank you so much to you both. And yeah, it was great to meet the teens over the summer. Really appreciated that. Next up, we're going to Win Constantini, who actually has done extensive study of green jobs, Conservation Corps-like programs, and was a participant in our working session on this topic back in March. So Win, you have the floor.
Great, thanks. I actually have some slides to share. Just get things going. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Win Costantini, and I recently received my master's degree in city planning from MIT. And as Councilor Bach said, my master's thesis analyzed Boston's opportunity to integrate climate change, economic inequity, and racial injustice through the creation of a green job program, which in my work I titled the Boston Future Corps. So I conducted 46 interviews from November 2020 through March 2021 with stakeholders, including workforce development, environmental, community, and labor organizations, as well as corps and peer cities like Power Corps, participated in 2 city council meetings and held a focus group as well. And so my work sought to understand the existing green workforce development ecosystem in Boston, and I created a visual representation pictured here, which serves 4 purposes. The first is to name the relevant stakeholders, policies, and programs, as well as existing career pathways, to pull apart these actors' complex relationships to each other, to serve as a tool for the city in considering partnerships and career pathways, and also to show the organizational and political infrastructure that already exists in an effort for this new program to strengthen rather than duplicate existing programs. So in order to actually be able to read this diagram, it's also broken down into smaller visualizations and sector-specific maps, including maps of existing and potential career pathways. So this is just one example of the potential urban forestry career pathway in Boston. As well as outside of the sort of sector-specific ecosystem, there's also a surrounding ecosystem of expertise, resources, relationships, and advocates that this program could not be successful or impactful without in the long term. And so I organized these actors into 5 areas: outreach and engagement, education, funding, addressing barriers to employment, and advocacy. And finally, I created a list of values-based indicators, which are summarized here. And in a longer document include goals, challenges, and guiding questions for decision makers to consider in the program design and implementation process. And these indicators can be used alongside the ecosystem maps to explore what groups will be affected by and should be included in these different decisions. And it is my sincere hope that the tools I've described can be of use to these decision makers for this program, and to ensure that it is as impactful as possible for both participants and the city and the environment. And this work has also inspired an interest at MIT to build on these recommendations and partner with stakeholders in Boston to support a transformational program. And my colleague, Lisbeth Shepard, has provided written testimony as well that describes this potential partnership further. And if you have any questions, this is my contact information. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Win. I think that you shared a version of that diagram at the hearing in March, and I think it illustrates the opportunity and challenge we have here, which is the vast number of resources and then the complexity of sort of pulling them together into a coordinated program that gives our young people a real one-stop shop way into these jobs. So like I said, hub and spokes, but we need a strong hub, and that's I think where we've got to go from here. So thank you. Next up is Trina, and then it will be, so Trina Marie Ruffin, and then it'll be Mike Ritter, and then Martin Ritter. Trina?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trina Marie Ruffin. I am actually here to speak as a resident today. A little background, I am involved with youth development, reentry, recidivism, also education, and going green. I'm here as a resident to first of all thank everyone who's at the hearing, who are bringing opportunities, resources, but also solutions to what Boston is dealing with when it's coming to going green. We have already had a background with green, and I just ask that we continue what we've already started, which was to involve the community, mainly the youth and the young adults. I wanted to talk real quick about what was said about reentry. What was said about youth and education and starting with inside the institution. I had opportunity to work with DYS, helping inmates start entrepreneurship, and it worked. So I'm here to say that we can start green with inside the institution at the DYS level at least. I think it will prepare them. It will cut down numbers with recidivism, reentry. It also gives them a sense of pride, the ones that do want to be a part of the program, because we are working with two different demographic of people, right? We have the youth and the young adults who want to take part, and we're going to have some that's not going to show great interest until they see what kind of outcome that can betterment them. And what I was thinking is, you guys came together with all these great opportunities and great programs, Common Square CDC, the green infrastructure, all these great programs. And so I asked that the programs we have into place now, speaking as a resident and as a parent, can we allocate money to them now and get them going and keep them going as we work on solutions to bring other infrastructures in, other partners in to help the infrastructure going green. I'm just proud and happy that we are continuing green because we've always been a part of green. I just want to say thank everyone for being here and sharing your ideas and your programs and your services, and that we should all cross-connect and piggy bank off each other, because you all have amazing ways of how to reach, amazing ways of how to give services to the public, mainly the youth and young adults. It seems like we're having some problems with how to keep them engaged, but also what to supply them after they've taken the trainings that will show sustainability as far as their economy, their income, and how to help the economy. And what I say is that work on the children we have now and the young adults we have now, release the money to help the programs that are into place now who are doing 20 kids, 100 kids, or 50 kids, because that means something, and it does build up as time go along. And the ones that are not on board, we're hoping, because a lot of people look at green as just a figure of speech, but today it is becoming a real known movement, and a lot of young people are interested. And I say down the line, I'm working to do a green curriculum with the Boston Public Schools. I want to have green start at a very young age to introduce them, so it's just something normal as getting up, looking at the sun or looking at the rain. I want it to be normal. And I think you guys are going in the right direction by coming together. I say my last thing is the public schools some schools does this where they have a agreement between the school, the company, and the state, and saying that we get together and that we're going to all work together to make, which is one objective is to make sure that the future youth and young adults are part of green and that they don't miss out. And I just want to end this by saying we learn, we build, and we teach. That's our job. And everyone here is doing your job. And I just want to say thank you, speaking as a resident, and it's truly needed. And thank you again. I appreciate your time and your opportunity.
Thank you so much, Trina. We really appreciate your testimony. Next up, we've got Mike Ritter and then Martin. Mike?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for having me. And thank you for this wonderful idea, and it's nice to see it moving quickly. I'm Mike Ritter. I'm a BPS parent. My daughters go to the Lee Academy Pilot School. And among the many great possible applications of a BCCC, I'd like to put forward the HVACs in Boston Public Schools. It's estimated that 80% of buildings in Boston will need to undergo deep energy retrofits and be electrified by 2050. Boston Public Schools must be at the top of the deep energy retrofit list, along with public housing. And I'm excited by the potential for BCCC to do this work. 90 out of 125 BPS schools have no HVAC. Days will only get hotter. Ventilation this winter in many schools will be provided by open windows. Neighborhood air must be improved and carbon overall cut in the city. And the deep energy retrofits, including HVACs, would address all these issues. The recent BERDO 2.0 city ordinance requires large buildings to have their carbon emissions by 2030 and eliminate them by 2050. Replacing one boiler for another shouldn't be happening anymore, but that is what was discussed for 2 schools at a school committee meeting just 2 weeks ago. And it's noted in this hearing order that the city of Boston should lead by example by retrofitting existing municipal buildings. However, in the half year I've been advocating for HVACs in all BPS schools, I've only seen meaningful but painfully slow incremental work being done to address BPS facilities. The minute BPS HVAC work is done, it will pay us back with healthier kids and staff, better learning environments, cleaner air inside and outside schools, and buildings that actually could be effective summer learning locations and or community cooling stations. And furthermore, pairing HVAC with solar panels would free up significant amount of gas money spent on heat in most schools to go towards education once the systems are paid off. Boston has the resources, BPS has the need, and the technology exists. The big question is who will be doing the deep energy retrofits, and the idea of HVACs in BPS schools being installed at least partly by BCC is really exciting, doubly exciting. Boston residents and quality jobs could provide fossil fuel-free heating, cooling, and ventilation in Boston schools to Boston's more than deserving children. If you're interested in the petition I started about this, you can find it searching BPS_HVAC_now. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mike. Really appreciate that testimony and agree that's the kind of synergy that we're looking for. And it was noted in my original hearing order on this that, I think we have capacity to grow the amount of our capital budget in the city that we're spending on green projects writ large, right? Including, in our public buildings, and we want that work to be done by our young people. So thank you so much. Martin.
Thank you, Councillor Block, and welcome to your new term in the City Council. I'm speaking on this occasion really as a grandfather of 8 grandchildren who's concerned about the future society and economy, which they will experience for a lot longer than I. And in that context, I have a few questions, observations, and a few questions. The first is, and I think Chief White-Hammond referred to this, talking about the question of the basic skills that people coming into these kind of programs may or may not have. And she mentioned reading. I would like to draw attention to numeracy, where unfortunately Americans actually, not just young people, but adults generally, score relatively low compared to other countries. And yet being able to be comfortable working with numbers is essential to a wide variety of jobs. So I hope that that is taken care of in these kinds of programs, or as Chief White-Hammond pointed out, you may get to the point where somebody is lacking something without which they'll be unable to do the job that they're trying to get. My second observation, or really question, has to do with what is the definition of a green job? Are we thinking about it comprehensively in terms of the sorts of jobs for which there's likely to be, and currently maybe already is, a shortage that will be around in the future? So one example that was already raised, I think, by Councillor Braden, is jobs in life science, in life sciences, in lab space. We might call them perhaps gene jobs rather than green jobs. But it does raise the question, because there's another example of an industry that was clearly going through a major transformation in the next decade, two or three decades, which is that of the automobile industry. What about training people to do the very different kinds of things that will be necessary with electric vehicles? And there are clearly a lot of jobs that are going to be lost with people that understand how to work with things like, combustion engines and the kind of drivetrains that are needed for them. And it'll be much more software oriented and trying to figure out how to handle batteries. In that context, I'm wondering the extent to which this program is going to be working with major companies whose names I haven't heard so far in the presentation, such as General Electric or the John Hancock Company, or even actually the very major automobile dealers such as Herb Chambers, who may be interested in contributing to the kind of training that is needed. I'm thinking of the kind of apprenticeship programs that have been installed for a long time in Germany. Now, on the positive side, in conclusion, I'd say that I find this initiative extremely inspiring. And if it works well, it could be a definitive example of what government can and will do for the sake of all of us as a whole, and also indeed help work, cooperate with the private sector, which seems to be a sense that has been increasingly lost in the United States, the idea that there is a common good, and the common good, in order to be achieved, requires both the public sector and the private sector working together. So thank you all very much, and congratulations to all the city councillors who got re-elected, and for the campaigns that, by the very low standards we've become used to in the United States and the United Kingdom, are remarkably civilized and actually intelligent. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Martin. And definitely, I know in the industry academy there's several of the industry academies in Philadelphia. They have the one in solar works directly with solar employers, some of the larger solar employers, and the masonry one, I think, also works directly with a masonry employer and actually funnels into roles in that. I don't know if Chief, if you wanted to add anything, but I totally agree. You're right that we haven't talked as much about those private employers today, but you're completely right that that has to be a big part of the pipeline.
Yeah, no, I think we want to look at it. There's some sectors in which there's we are starting from the public sector because some of the barriers that we can actively push in the public sector are harder to get moved in the private sector. And so I want to be honest that I hope that we can move people into public sector jobs and then we start losing them in the private sector. But in some instances, like when we had an honest conversation with Philly Power Corp, they've had a real hard time getting the big tree companies to take on their young people. And so I think my hope is that our on-ramp to that is a couple, 2-3 years at the Boston Parks Department gives you the necessary experience and support necessary. And then maybe people do want to move to a private sector job. So yes, in sectors where there's a willing partner, we will definitely go there. And solar has been one. Trees have had some challenges. So we'll have to think where there are ready partnerships and where we need to push the envelope. But we completely agree it should not only be in the public sector, especially when so many groups were making public pronouncements about their commitment to diversity. We have an ability to help them, but we're going to have to engage in some critical conversations about how those commitments become real.
Great, thank you so much, Chief. And I think that is all the public testimony that I've got today. So thank you to everybody who came and testified. Thank you so much to the members of the administration, again, for all your work on this, and also for staying to hear all of the public testimony. I really appreciate it. And looking forward to continuing lots of work ahead on this. So with that, this hearing of the Boston City Council's Committee on the Environment is adjourned. Thank you all.